When did your gut feeling save you? Story 1. I was hiking by myself. Really smart, I know. I got this feeling that something wasn't right, but I normally act on that feeling. That day, however, I ignored it. I went to a lookout, turned around, and headed back, about the same place as I got that feeling. I noticed cougar tracks cross mine in the snow. They followed mine for a few meters and then went to a bit of shrub that overlooked both where I was now and the lookout. I immediately left and avoided going anywhere near something that would give a cougar cover. Occasionally behind me, I would notice a small rustle in the bushes and trees or some snow falling off a disturbed branch. Story 2. I had something like this one time in elementary school when we had a recess. It was pretty average and we left at the normal time, but it just felt very off to me. But because I was 8 and didn't have common sense yet, I brushed the feeling off. Turns out that there was literally a guy who had been scoping out the playground for kids to lure to him in a stereotypical large white van. Story 3. Not me, but when my mom was a teenager, on 18th November 1987, she was going to London to visit a friend. It was around 7:20 p.m., and she decided she was going to take a taxi instead of going by tube, because it didn't feel right. King's Cross Tube Station. 10 minutes later, the whole station caught on fire, and 30 out of the 40 people there didn't survive. If she had decided to take the tube, she would likely have the same fate. Story 4. I stood up and had a quick Matrix-like wave, just like how the walls flex in the movie. I turned to the closest person and asked for a ride to the emergency room. Honestly, it felt like a little head rush or lightheadedness that I've had 100 times before. If I would have brushed it off as such, I wouldn't be here any longer. My lungs were at 30% capacity as I was drowning from fluids and had absolutely no other symptoms than the brief lightheaded feeling. Also, I had been feeling a bit down and hadn't eaten. The more I analyzed the situation, I had no idea why I asked a stranger for a ride to the hospital. Story 5. Posted this before. Took my 2 babies to an in-home daycare run by a lovely woman. About 9 days in, the woman's teenage son was home when I picked up my kids. He gave me a super creepy vibe, pulled the kids from the daycare and placed them elsewhere. Maybe 10 years later, that kid unalived 2 people and then unalived his own mom. Story 6. Went to a college party and one of the guys made me feel very uncomfortable. He didn't ever do anything to me, but something seemed off. I kept dumping my shots because getting smashed seemed like a bad idea. I ended up taking a friend and leaving while he told us that we were being lame by not having more of the Grey Goose. He did something bad to another girl at the party that night. Story 7. Had a friend who said we should go to this party he was invited to by a classmate of his. We ended up driving out to it. We noticed the neighborhood was not too pleasant and sketchy. We saw that the house had some lights on in the backyard but kind of quiet for a party. I decided that we should not go since something felt really off. My friend ended up finding the classmate who invited him, got robbed and threatened when he went to the party. It ended up being a fake party. Story 8. I'm a firefighter. We got called out to a tree fire started by fallen power lines. We pull up in the truck and I'm trusting that my driver and crew leader are doing their job and have good situational awareness. We get out of the truck and we've parked next to a set of power lines, not fallen. It's a very windy night and I can see the line swinging, so I voice my concerns to my crew leader who says it will be fine. We get the hose out, the risk of the tree fire catching onto a house outweighing the potential risk of arcing plus the line disconnected when it fell, and I'm on the branch ready to start putting it out with 2 others near me when I get a chill. I look up, see the line swinging violently and yell, "Everyone effing move!" As the 3 of us sprinted out and dived out of the way, we heard a noise and crack. And sure enough, the line we were under came loose and stayed connected to the power pole. If I hadn't got that chill, chances are we would have had Refried fireys. Story 9. Well, I was walking home. Wasn't late and I'm from a pretty safe area. But it was that time of year when it started to get dark really early, so I felt kind of ominous. Anyway, I passed this guy in a red sweater and red tracksuit bottoms, and he looks at me funny. Maybe he's high, maybe he's drunk. Either way, something is not quite right about him. I keep going. Look behind me. He's still there. Cross the road. He crosses with me. As soon as I turn a corner, I sprint to my apartment complex and run into the coded gate and wait. He rocks up a minute later and stares at me through the gate. He just stares at me for a good 10 or so seconds, then runs back the way he came. Shivers. Story 10. Was riding my motorcycle with a friend on the back. We were going down a country road behind a truck hauling a bunch of old car tires, and all of a sudden I decided we shouldn't be there, so I slowed way down to let the truck go ahead of us. Just as I did, one of the tires fell off the truck and landed right where we would have been. Story 11. At age 5, I was almost abducted by strangers at the park who had a bunch of toys on a blanket and tried to lure me into their motorhome. I looked back to my dad, who was talking to his friend maybe 100 yards away. I got a tummy ache when one of them tried to coax me by reaching for my arm to lead me away, and I screamed and ran back to my dad. Years later, I found out those same people had abducted other kids who weren't so lucky. Never ignored a gut feeling since. Thanks for all the positive feedback. And for your information, trust me, once my dad got over the shock, he let me have it for not only wandering off, but speaking to a complete stranger. I talked to my mom a bit about it today, and she told me my dad broke down and blamed himself. Positive outlook on this, though? Guys, this is just one instance, scary as it may be, where my gut led me in the right direction and my instinct for danger is now uncanny. I truly believe everything happens for a reason. I trusted my instincts and it kept me safe, and still does. Story 12. I woke up at 3 a.m. once sitting upright in bed. I felt on alert and my heart raced when I saw my cat was on alert too. Wide awake by my feet with his ears perked up, but I didn't see or hear anything weird. Something didn't feel right and I couldn't relax. So I got up and went to the kitchen, turned on some lights and ate food even though I wasn't that hungry. Eventually went back to bed. We discovered the next morning that someone had stopped while in the process of using some kind of tool to silently cut a big hole in the glass window in the living room. They were trying to break in, right next to the bedroom. I think the lights I turned on scared them away. Added. To add that we had 3 long years of issues with our neighbors. They repeatedly came into the property and were that we put up a 9-foot fence to keep them out. This attempted break-in happened right after the fence went up and 2 days before they all moved out. Glad those POS are long gone. Story 13. There's been a few times where I hadn't listened to my gut, but one sticks out where I did. I used to live in a smaller Minnesotan town, down near some train tracks and a bike/running path that extends out of town and into the woods. One evening, I'm sitting outside on my porch, drinking a couple of beers with my buddy. 2 dudes walk up on us, kind of out of nowhere, and immediately something seemed off about them. It's a college town and drunk people come up onto your porch a lot, or randomly just say hello on their way to or from the bars downtown. But these dudes had a weird vibe to them. I had a little black Louisville Slugger lying next to me on the porch, so I grabbed it and just held it across my lap. One dude asks us, "You guys got an extra smoke?" Buddy says nope. The other guy comes up real close almost onto the porch and says, "Did you see my face?" I just kept looking forward, but not directly at him, and just said, "Nah man, we didn't see anything." He said something like, "Good," and they both walked away. 2 nights later, I'm sitting in my living room with the same buddy and the local news is on. 2 guys were arrested for robbing and a man a couple of nights back on the trail down by the train tracks next to where I live. My buddy had looked at their faces coming up, and I had seen the dude clear as day that had asked me for the smoke. It was the same effing guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell button to receive notifications to my latest videos.